Barry Blunt, a cog in the corporate machine, had enough of his soul-crushing job. Today was the day he'd stand up, not just for himself, but for every office worker with dreams beyond spreadsheets. During the quarterly meeting, as the boss droned on about synergy, Barry stood, his chair screeching in agreement. "Ladies and gentlemen," Barry began, his voice cracking with newfound freedom, "I resign." The room fell silent, jaws dropped, coffee abandoned mid-sip. He continued with a flourish, "I resign to pursue the noble art of living." Cheers from the back, a gasp from the front, and Barry walked out, leaving behind his ID badge and a trail of confetti from a party popper he'd stashed for dramatic effect. His dream of freedom was sweet, but what awaited him at home was even sweeter, literally. His house, mysteriously, had become a gigantic chocolate bar. Returning home, Barry found his front yard littered with chocolate shavings and neighbors giggling. He approached his house, skeptical, until he touched the wall and a piece broke off, revealing a dark, velvety interior. His house was chocolate. Confused, he interrogated his landlord, who, through a series of unfortunate events, had used a special cocoa powder from a prank-loving friend in construction. This was supposed to be a surprise, the landlord said, trying to maintain a straight face. Surprise! Word spread, and soon, curiosity seekers and chocolate enthusiasts descended upon Barry's property. The local news dubbed it the Choco-Home. Barry, now a local celebrity, had to navigate the absurdity of his situation. He started charging 4 tours of his edible abode. But as his home was slowly eaten away, he realized he might need to find a new shelter before his house became a memory, or more accurately, a digestive one. With his home attracting more nibblers than a free cheese buffet, Barry saw an opportunity. He started a business, selling chunks of his chocolate house as unique gourmet treats. Buy a piece of Barry's Choco-Home. His signs read, drawing in chocolate aficionados and tourists. Business boomed. He organized chocolate tasting events, where his living room served as the main course. However, the novelty wore off when it rained, turning his walls into a gooey mess. Barry had to think fast. He launched chocolate insurance, promising customers a new piece if theirs melted, which was a clever way to sell more chocolate. Despite the entrepreneurial success, he faced a dilemma. His home was shrinking. Each sale meant less house to live in. Soon, his living room was the size of a walk-in closet, and his kitchen became a nook. Barry needed a plan before his home became history. Living in a chocolate house presented unique challenges. Barry's bed was now a giant chocolate bar, causing morning cocoa dustings that he had to vacuum off the floor. His shower was a chocolate fountain, which was amusing until he ran out of vanilla-scented shampoo. The neighborhood kids loved him. He was like Willy Wonka without the legal troubles. They knocked daily, hoping for a piece of his ever-dwindling abode. Barry tried to adapt, using marshmallows for insulation and licorice for window seals. However, the house's structural integrity was compromised when a summer heat wave turned parts of his home into a molten mess. One evening, as he watched the chocolate drip from his ceiling, he realized this wasn't just a quirky lifestyle, it was becoming a health hazard. It was time to look for a more permanent, less edible solution. The health inspector, drawn by the peculiar complaints, visited Barry's chocolate abode. After witnessing the cocoa calamity, he declared the house unfit for human habitation. "You can't live here, Mr. Blunt. It's a health code violation," the inspector said, while licking chocolate off his clipboard. With nowhere to go and no job to return to, Barry felt like the chocolate in the bottom of a fondue pot stuck. He decided to throw one last bash, inviting the whole town to eat Barry's house before it either melted or he was fined into oblivion. The event was a hit. People came with spoons, knives, and an insatiable appetite for chocolate. As the community chipped away at his home, Barry realized this might just be the end of his chocolate era, but perhaps the beginning of something new. The Eat Barry's house party was in full swing. Children ran around with chocolate mustaches, adults laughed with chocolate teeth, and Barry, for once, felt a sense of community. Among the crowd was Coco, an eccentric chocolatier, intrigued by Barry's story. "You've turned adversity into a community event," Coco said, impressed. "I need someone with your unique perspective in my chocolate factory. Barry, now surrounded by half-eaten walls and a dwindling chocolate home, saw the job offer as a lifeline. The next day, he showed up at Coco's factory. The transition from a chocolate house to a chocolate factory was surreal, but Barry was determined to make it work. Here, he wouldn't have to worry about his home being eaten or melting. Instead, he'd help create chocolate, not lose it. Maybe, just maybe, his luck was turning around. Barry's charm and the story of his chocolate house made him an instant hit at the factory. While his chocolate-making skills were rudimentary at best, his flair for marketing was unparalleled. He spun tales of his edible home, turning the factory's chocolates into legendary treats. Coco, seeing potential, tasked Barry with creating a new line, Barry's Choco-Home collection. The idea? Chocolates shaped like houses, filled with surprises. It was a hit. People loved the novelty, and sales soared. Barry thrived in his new role, his days filled with the sweet aroma of success rather than the smell of melting walls. His personal life was also looking up. He and Coco bonded over cocoa. Their relationship developed as naturally as cocoa beans fermenting in a chocolate, sweet and full of potential. With his newfound success, Barry was finally able to save enough to start rebuilding his life. However, his days at the factory weren't just about chocolate anymore. Coco had become more than just his boss. She was his partner in life and business. Barry's fame as the chocolate house hero grew, and he used this to his advantage. He started giving talks at schools about turning misfortune into fortune, using his story as a lesson in resilience. Despite his success, Barry missed the quirky comfort of his chocolate home. Coco, understanding this, proposed an idea. They could build a chocolate-themed guest house in their backyard. It was a fusion of their worlds, Barry's love for his former home and Coco's passion for chocolate. This project would be a testament to their journey together, both in love and in business. The community event for the opening of Barry and Coco's chocolate-themed guest house was a spectacle. It wasn't made of chocolate this time, but every room had chocolate-inspired decor or treats. Barry felt a warm familiarity as people gathered. Reminiscent of the day he lost his chocolate house, but in a much sweeter context. Coco, next to him, whispered, "This is just the beginning." That evening, under a sky painted with the colors of sunset, Barry proposed to Coco. He knelt, presenting a chocolate ring box, which he opened to reveal an actual diamond ring. "Will you make life with me as sweet as this?" Coco laughed, her eyes sparkling more than the ring. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Their story, from a house of chocolate to a love as enduring as fine cocoa, was set to inspire many more. The wedding was a celebration of chocolate and love, held in their newly built guest house. Guests indulged in chocolate fountains, cocoa cocktails, and a cake that could feed a small town. Barry and Coco, now Mr. and Mrs. Blunt, cut into a cake shaped like their chocolate house, symbolizing the melding of their pasts and futures. After the celebrations, life settled into a sweet routine. Barry continued to tell his story, now expanded to include his love story, inspiring others to find sweetness in their lives despite odd circumstances. Coco expanded her chocolate empire, with Barry as her creative director, blending humor and innovation into every product. Their home became a local landmark, not just for its chocolate theme, but for what it represented: resilience, community, and the joy of turning life's cocoa beans into chocolate. Years later, as they sat on their porch, watching their children play among the chocolate sculptures, Barry remarked, "Who knew resigning from a job would lead to this?" Coco smiled, "Life's like chocolate. You never know what you're going to get, but it's always sweet with the right person." And they both laughed, knowing they had indeed found the sweetest life together.